2.6, graphs of basic functions. So you had an identity function, which is just a line, a squaring function, which is the parabola, cubic function, which like goes up, square root function, cube root function, absolute value function, and the greatest integer function, which is a step function. So we're going to use those to help us as a reference to answer our questions. As far as what we're doing in this section. So, number 2, so you'll need to be on page 255 to answer these questions. It says, which graph is f of x equals the absolute value of x, and on what interval is it increasing? All right, so I'm looking at those graphs. I have a through I, and I'm looking for the function f of x equals the absolute value of x. This is the absolute value function. So a through I, which one is the absolute value function? Yep, letter G. And on what interval is it increasing? So basically, where is it getting bigger? Or like, where does it have a positive slope? It should be a number. Like an interval. So what part of the graph has basically a positive slope? So from 0 to infinity. All right, 4. We're only answering part of the question. Which one or which graph, let me say that, is not the graph of a function?
C.
Why?
Because it doesn't pass the vertical line test.
Yep, doesn't pass the vertical line test. It's a sideways parabola, so if you take it and you slide your pencil along it, there's multiple intersection points, so that one is not. The second part wanted you to write the equation of the line. We're not doing that part. Number 6, which graph is f of x equals, and it's these kind of funny looking bracket things, kind of looks like this, of x, and what is the value when x equals 1.5? So you may have to look at the notation of how I had written one of the graphs for you to know which one that goes with. Or maybe by process of elimination, figure out what the other graphs are and figure out which one this would have to be. Yep, it would have to be B, which is the greatest integer function. So they want what is the value, so basically what is y when x is 1.5? So if you go to 1.5 on x, what is the y value? Yep, 1. So that line, it just is straight across at 1, so at 1.5 it's at 1. And number 8, which one is the graph of f of x equals the square root of x, and what's the domain? Yep, D. And what would the domain, so what x values does that graph take on?
0 to infinity.
Yep, 0, and we're including because we can have 0 in the absolute, or in the absolute value, in the square root, so 0 to infinity, like that. Alright, I'm going to do 9 with you just because it's a little different in what it's asking for. It says, which one is discontinuous at many points and then what's its range? So basically, which graph isn't one continuous function that just like keeps flowing the whole time, like throughout the graph? Which one?
B.
Yep, B, the greatest integer function. And what would the range of that be? So what y values does that graph take on? And keep in mind, they're only showing you part of the graph.
0 or negative infinity to infinity.
Yep, negative infinity to infinity. You could also write it as the fancy R, all real numbers. Alright, so that's all that we're doing with this section. So I did most of the even ones for you. I'm not going to have you do number 10. That one's a little more confusing in what it's asking for. So your problems that you need to do are just 1, 3, 5, and 7. And that's all you'll need from this section.